Demi Moore was, for decades, one of the most desired and successful women in Hollywood. In the 90s, she was the symbol of female strength and sensuality on screen. But behind this perfect image was a deeply painful story. She recently starred in The Substance, a film where she plays a star who is no longer young and resorts to a mysterious substance to regain her appearance, and the critics gave her a standing ovation. And it's because Demi, in reality, wasn't playing a character. She was playing herself. Throughout her life, she has battled internal demons such as obsession with her body, fear of aging, the need for approval, and addictions. She was married to heartthrob Bruce Willis, and later fell in love and married Ashton Kutcher, who is 15 years younger than her. This obviously brought her a lot of criticism, but also much suffering that led her to hit rock bottom in silence. Upon receiving her Golden Globe for this film last January, she said that this script came to her at a point in her life when she thought all opportunities for her were over. But it is very ironic to think how, when she was nominated for an Oscar as Best Actress, she lost it to another actress who was much younger and new to the industry. It's as if the fiction of this movie was reflected in reality. So, in this video, we will see who Demi Moore is, a woman who, regardless of scandals, headlines, and flashbulbs, has had to rebuild herself over and over again, and with whom many of us may be able to identify. Before continuing with the video, Demi is not one of those stars who always dreamed of being one. She got into acting by accident, and it's that when she was between 13 and 15 years old, she met Anastasia Kinski, a 17-year-old German girl who was a model and had moved from Germany to Los Angeles to seek opportunities in Hollywood. She lived with her mother in the same apartment building where Demi lived with hers. They became friends, and since Anastasia didn't speak or read English well, Demi would read the scripts sent to her by directors who wanted her in their movies. Demi saw Anastasia as a being of light, as a sensual woman who magnetically attracted everyone, and she wanted to be like Anastasia. She said, "If acting is what I have to do to be like her, I'm going to do it." Anastasia had a very difficult relationship with her mother. She had been supporting her financially since she was 12 years old, and that was something she had, in common with Demi, also a terrible relationship with her mother. Virginia Gaines was her name, and she was a teenage mother. She had Demi at 18 years old on November 11, 1962, in Roswell, New Mexico. She dated Demi's father, Dan Gaines, during high school, but when he left for another city to attend college, Virginia didn't agree, so she married another man, Charles Harmon. But when Dan came back, she divorced Charles to finally marry Dan. As you can see, from the courtship, Demi's parents' relationship was already toxic. And that's not even the worst part. Later, after getting married, they divorced, but they reconciled, so they got married again. It didn't work again, and they divorced again. She has a brother, 5 years younger, named Morgan, who was also born in Roswell. But shortly after his birth, her mother found out that her husband was cheating on her. So, to fix the marriage, they moved to California. She thought that by taking her husband away from his lover, the problem would be solved. But when you move for that reason, you're bringing the problem with you. And that's how it was. The family practically moved every 6 months, sometimes because of the father's job. He sold newspaper ads, but also often to get him away from the lovers he kept finding. Unfortunately, Demi's parents were alcoholics. They also came from dysfunctional families with many unresolved traumas, and for that reason, they couldn't be the parents that she and her brother deserved. To make this video, I read her autobiography, Inside Out. Well, I didn't read it. I listened to it as an audiobook, and I swear there were parts that felt so painful from her childhood. It was so hard that I found it difficult to continue. Demi was a girl who only longed for love and attention from her parents, but sadly, they couldn't give it to her. At a young age, she lived through an event that she says marked the end of her childhood. She witnessed her mother attempting to take her own life, and Demi had to help her, and this type of event kept happening many more times throughout her life, and Demi felt the responsibility to take care of her. Sometime later, her mother decided to go to therapy to recover, but she ended up becoming the lover of the therapist, so she went to live with him. Demi's father found out and took the children away, but not out of a desire to take care of them or to be a model father, but rather to get revenge on her mother. According to Demi, he was a con artist who lived pulling off scams and running from justice. Still, Her parents got back together again, and this time, she no longer wanted to participate in that dynamic and went to live with her maternal grandmother. With her grandmother, she experienced what it was like for someone to love you, to care for you, and to be concerned about you for the first time in her life. She said she couldn't understand how her mother could return to her father when she was always complaining and saying how unhappy he made her. But unfortunately, when one is used to chaos, that same chaos calls to you. And that's what happened to Demi, because she only lasted 6 months with her grandmother and returned to live with her parents. When her parents finally separated for the last time, Demi was 13 years old, and that's when she went to live with her mother in that apartment building in Los Angeles, where I told you she met Anastasia Kinski. While unpacking boxes from the move, she discovered her parents' marriage certificate, which was dated February 1963, and something didn't add up, because she had been born in November 1962. At first, she thought it was a mistake. But later, it hit her like a bucket of cold water, the realization that her father wasn't her biological father. The audiobook was narrated by Demi herself, and out of everything she shared, there were 2 moments where I noticed her voice crack, and one of those was this one. When she asked her mother if Dan was her real dad, her biological father was actually her mother's first husband, Charlie Harmon. She was extremely angry because everyone around her knew the truth, except for her. When Dan found out that Demi knew the truth, he got very angry with her mother. They began to fight. No one asked Demi how she felt, but the worst part was this. She says, "The worst part wasn't finding out he wasn't my father, but realizing he wasn't capable of assuring me that, despite that, he still loved me. I'm about to cry here, but it must be incredibly painful when the person you've seen as your father can't assure you that he loves you like a daughter." The next day, Demi met her biological father. He traveled from Texas to California to meet her. He took her to Texas to introduce her to his family. But to no one's surprise, Charlie was also extremely unstable. He had abandoned her mother while she was pregnant. Later, he married another woman, but had lovers, had children with various women. And Demi didn't like that experience. She returned to California with her mother. Things were a mess. And at 15 years old, she met older guys in their 20s with whom she got involved, confusing what they gave her with love. And it's that. How can a 15-year-old girl tell the difference between bad intentions and someone who truly loves her for who she is, when no one ever taught her that? Later, her mother and she met a 49-year-old man named Basil Dumas, who approached them with what seemed like good intentions to help them. He would pick Demi up from school, take her out to eat, and in her innocence, she thought there was nothing wrong with that. Little by little, she began to notice this man's bad intentions. She tried to distance herself from him, but one day, when she came home from school, he was there. Her mother wasn't, only he was there waiting for her, and he took advantage of her. Demi says he told her, "How does it feel to be sold by your mother for $500? Wow." She says at that moment, she felt like she was an orphan. And seriously, what kind of mother can do this? What she's not sure of is whether there really was a deal where he paid that money to be allowed in the apartment. But what she does know is that her mother gave this man the keys to the apartment she shared with her 15-year-old daughter. At that point, Demi was already taking acting classes to be like her friend Anastasia. But after that, she dropped out of high school and went to live with a classmate from those acting lessons, a 28-year-old musician named Tom. The following year, Tom took her to a concert by the band, The Cats, where Demi fell in love at first sight with the lead singer. His name was Demi Moore. She left Tom and went to live with him. And he wasn't appropriate for her age either. He was 29 and she was 16. And the worst part? He was married. He had married his high school sweetheart, but Demi says she didn't care, that she was only thinking of herself. So, Freddie divorced his wife and 6 weeks later married her. From him comes the surname Moore. While she was married, she met a friend told her about a photographer who took intimate photos and paid very well. The best part was that he sold those photos in Japan, not in the United States. So it seemed like nothing would happen if she did this to earn money. Since Demi was still 16 years old, she lied about her age, saying she was 18. She took these photos and began to be a sensual model. She even appeared on the cover of Playboy. But she couldn't appear inside because she was still underage. Later, she said she regretted doing this, but she did enjoy the modeling part. So she joined a modeling agency and said that, on one hand, modeling made her feel very proud of herself, but on the other hand, it was a world designed to blow up her self-esteem. She felt like she was only valued for her attractiveness. As her opportunities as a model increased, she received the news that her father had passed away at the age of 36, which impacted her greatly. Despite everything, Dan was still her father. And after finding out he wasn't her biological father, their relationship had cooled down significantly, and she couldn't say goodbye. From this point on, her emotional strength collapsed. The more roles she got as a model, the more insecure she felt about herself. The only thing that helped her overcome her insecurity was drinking alcohol. This was something she had promised. Herself she would never do, so as not to resemble her parents. Moreover, she was unfaithful to her husband with another man. Unfortunately, there are patterns that are almost impossible to break. Success with a bitter taste. She never stopped taking acting classes, so she landed her first film at the age of 20, the movie Choices, in 1981. The following year, in 1982, she had to travel to Brazil. It was her first time traveling internationally because she got a beginnings in acting. She had a role in the movie Blame It on Rio, and since she wasn't the lead actress in that film, she had a lot of free time to stroll around Brazil, party, and unfortunately, consume as much alcohol and substances as she wanted. And this wasn't casual or light use. Every day, she depended on them to feel okay. Likewise, she was unfaithful to her husband. So, when she returned to the United States, she was honest with him. They ended the marriage, and he didn't care much because he says he left with his guitar student who was 14 years old. Before filming her next movie, St. Elmo's Fire, in 1985, the director realized the serious problem Demi had with substances. He tricked her. He told her they were going to meet at a business meeting to talk about the movie, but in reality, he arranged for her to go to a rehab center. Obviously, Demi didn't even admit she had a problem, let alone want to go to rehab. But he forced her. He told her that if she didn't enter that place and at least detox for a while, she wouldn't be able to do the movie. Demi didn't value her life at that point, nor did she care about being well. The only thing that mattered to her was being able to act in that movie. So, she finally stayed there for 16 days, and for the rest of the filming, the director assigned someone to be with her 24 hours a day to prevent her from relapsing. Today, she acknowledges that making that movie, and the director and crew, literally saved her life. She was only 21 years old at the time. But do you know what the problem was? She went from one obsession to another because she took refuge in food. She started gaining weight, and another big movie was coming up. The director told her, "The role is yours, but only if you lose a bit of weight." She says that at that moment, she pretended to be fine and acted like nothing was wrong. But in her mind, a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions was unleashed, triggering another big problem in her life. She restricted herself in ways you can't imagine. She even says she literally put a lock on the refrigerator. She says that this new problem was even worse than the substances. These types of disorders and addictions are just symptoms of something much deeper that one carries inside. She did that movie, everything went well, and she began a relationship with another actor named Emilio Estevez. But that relationship was also extremely toxic. They were going to get married, but in the meantime, he got his ex-girlfriend pregnant. And even with that betrayal, Demi was still thinking about going through with the wedding. And it's no surprise because how many times did she see that same example at home? Her mother forgiving her father's betrayals over and over again. But fortunately, her therapist helped her see the grave mistake she was about to make. And she didn't get married. Later came the first great love of her life, actor and movie heartthrob Bruce Willis, who was already famous and wealthy when they met in 1987 at a premiere. Demi says he courted her like no one else ever had. He was a gentleman, attentive, romantic. No one had ever treated her like that. She was 25, he was 32. And everything happened very fast. They got married, and 9 months later, their first daughter was born. She finally had the life she had always dreamed of. She had money, fame, and wealth. But she herself says that when you have so many unresolved traumas, none of that means anything. 5 months after her baby was born, she starred in the movie Ghost, or El Fantasma del Amor in Spanish, which was released in the summer of 1990 and is now considered a classic film that put Demi on the international map as an actress. But who would have thought that while the whole world admired her beauty and the light she radiated, inside, she felt terrible. Ghost received 5 Oscar nominations, and she was nominated for Best Actress at the Golden Globes. But the award ended, up going to Julia Roberts, because that same year the movie Pretty Woman premiered and also became, and still is, a huge phenomenon. While her career was on the rise, her marriage with Bruce Willis was in decline because he realized he had rushed into marriage and fatherhood. But then she got pregnant again, and she says it made him happy. And for a while, he seemed to forget everything. During that pregnancy, she did that iconic magazine cover. We're talking about 1991, when a pregnant woman was relegated. She wasn't considered sexy or anything like that. She had to cover up. Demi wanted to challenge the system by posing like this, about 8 months pregnant, and from there, she inspired many other celebrities and ordinary women to do the same. You can imagine all the criticism she received from many people and media outlets, but she was also heavily supported by feminist groups, and to this day, it's considered one of the best magazine covers in history. It was named the second best cover in 50 years, only after the very controversial photo of John Lennon with Yoko, taken 5 hours before he was killed. Because Demi was so famous and drew so much attention from the paparazzi, her mother began to take advantage of it to make money. She sold stories about Demi, childhood and private photos of Demi, and even intimate photos she took of herself that she sold to a magazine. But of course, they sold them as Demi's mom, so this hurt her deeply, and she decided to distance herself. She didn't speak to her mother for 8 years. When her second daughter, Scout, was born, her milk wasn't suitable for breastfeeding because it didn't have enough fat. Demi was still obsessed with exercise and dieting, but she didn't care. For Demi, nothing was more important than staying thin. Her next movie was a very sensual one, Indecent Proposal, where she had to do certain scenes, And when the director saw her, he said, "Not like this. I don't want you because you look super flat and like a man. I want an actress with curves, and if you don't gain a few pounds, I won't give you the role." Demi told him, "You don't know what you're asking of me. It's practically impossible for me." And just to see how complex this whole issue of disorders is, under so much stress and pressure from the director, she ended up getting pneumonia. That prevented her from working out, and she was able to gain some weight. The director was happy, but she felt terrible. She finished the movie and went back to her obsession with exercising and restricting herself. All of that, even during her 3rd pregnancy, which was considered high risk, and the baby was born prematurely and underweight. But Demi still didn't care. In 1996, she made the movie Striptease, which gave her the status of a sex symbol and also made her the highest paid actress in Hollywood. But the media hated her for it, as if being the highest paid was a bad thing. They mocked her in magazines with headlines like, "Give me more," as if she were a greedy person who only cared about money, even though she was earning less than male actors. But she was the one with the problem. She was also criticized for stepping away from that sensual and ultra-feminine image to do the complete opposite, the role of G.I. Jane, where she shaved her head, became more muscular, and presented herself with much more strength and less femininity. But this rejection helped her realize that she was stronger than that. It was then that she decided to focus on exercising just to feel good, without being obsessed about anything, eating only when she was hungry, and if sometimes she wasn't, that was okay. She listened more to what her body asked for, rather than manipulating it so strictly. So, at the height of her career, for her physical and emotional well-being, she quit acting. Shortly after, she was told that her mother was on her deathbed due to lung cancer at the age of 54. All that addiction had taken a toll. Demi went to New Mexico to say goodbye, and was still able to find her mother lucid, and her mother told her this: "I wish I had been different with you." You have no idea what those words meant to Demi, because it was like validating her pain, that her mother understood she had made mistakes, and that brought a lot of peace to both of them. This was the second time Demi's voice cracked in the whole book. It didn't crack when she talked about her partners, her children, or even herself. It cracked when she talked about her parents. This shows how deep the wounds can be from those we most needed and expected to protect us. Her marriage with Bruce. Willis ended because, in the end, the only thing that united them was their daughters. They would meet up to be with their daughters and eventually decided to live separately. But still, they functioned well as a family with divorced parents. By 2003, her daughters were fans of Charlie's Angels and convinced their mother to return to acting. She received an offer to participate in Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle. In a promotional scene for the movie, she met the second great love of her life, the guy of the moment and rising actor Ashton Kutcher. He noticed her while she was saying goodbye to her daughters on the phone and told her, "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," in a flirty tone. He only paid attention to Demi during dinner. They ended up talking all night, and Demi says she felt like she had known him all her life, that she didn't feel the age difference. And look, I'm not going to lie, I remember this relationship. Because back then, I was a teenager in love with Ashton Kutcher like many teenage girls at the time, and seeing him with Demi Moore seemed like an extremely strange relationship. And to this day, it still seems strange to me, regardless of whether it's the man or the woman who's older. But from what Demi says in her book, they both fell madly in love. Demi was everything Ashton wanted, to be a successful, wealthy actor, well-established in the industry. And Ashton was for Demi that stage of her life she never got to live. She writes in her book that he made her feel young again, desired, and comfortable with herself. Things she unfortunately couldn't feel on her own. And often, we fall more in love with the voids that person fills in us than with the person themselves. And while some relationships do start this way and can work, I don't think it's a solid foundation for a stable relationship. In her case, especially, it would later bring her serious consequences. Demi warned Ashton that once their relationship went public, he would lose his freedom because the media wouldn't leave him alone. She knew it would be a huge scandal. He didn't understand the magnitude of it at the time. So he said it wasn't a problem, but later, he told her that if he had known what it would turn into, he never would have gotten involved with her. Ashton got along well with Demi's daughters and wanted to be a good stepfather to them since he himself had had a stepfather. And when Bruce met Ashton, he thought Demi had brought him as a gift for their daughters. On some occasions, she had brought other young celebrities, like Aaron Carter, to introduce to her daughters. But when Bruce found out that they were a couple, he didn't have any problem with it. And of course, how could he have had a problem, considering that he had been with two women after Demi, and both were 23 years younger than him? And to show how the media and in part society are when Demi and Ashton's relationship became public, it created a huge scandal. I can understand why it became a scandal, but no one talked about the age difference between Bruce and his women. It wasn't an issue. Demi was so in love with Ashton that she didn't care, and she took him to the Charlie's Angels premiere, where all the media would be focused on her. On one arm was her ex-husband, and on the other was her boyfriend, 15 years younger. Of course, this created a scandal, but they defended their relationship. They did it in a very comedic way. They went to Saturday Night Live, where Ashton did a comedy sketch about not understanding why the media was so obsessed with them, saying it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. You'll see how Demi appears in the audience. Later, he asked her to come on stage with him, and she performed an act pretending she couldn't walk, using a walker. While he helped her up, continuing with the joke, "She is still the hottest woman in Hollywood. I'll say you are the hottest boy." "Thank you. Not on TV. Save that up." "Yeah, I just don't get it though. I don't understand why the tabloids and the paparazzi are so fascinated with us. They are a bunch of damn fools." "I love you too." Even her voice came out sounding old. And I think there's no better way to silence the critics than by mocking and ridiculing yourself over what they're criticizing you for. And it worked, because the sketch was very well received, and they were left alone a little bit. At this point, Demi was 42 years old and already pregnant with Ashton's baby. They named the baby Chaplin. Before the sketch, Ashton invited her to Mexico to spend Valentine's Day. It was a very nice trip, but there he told her that he would like her to start drinking again, believing they could have a balance and that it wouldn't be a problem. Demi thought, he wants me to be that cool girl, so to speak, who can have a drink and it won't mean anything, and I'll do it for him. By this time, Demi had already been sober for 20 years. Those dark moments of addiction were far behind her. But that night, she ordered tequila, and although at first she thought she could handle the situation, that wasn't the case. Unfortunately, when a recovered alcoholic drinks again, their brain reactivates all the compulsive impulses they had before and falls back into old patterns. 6 weeks later, Ashton proposed to her. She was very excited, but told him she didn't want to pressure him. The fact that she was pregnant didn't mean they had to get married, but he told her that he really wanted to marry her. They began planning the wedding, but 6 months into the pregnancy, during a routine ultrasound, they discovered that the baby's heart had stopped beating, and she had to give birth anyway. You can imagine how devastating this must have been for Demi, one of the most terrible things that can happen to any woman. She says it was completely devastating for her. She blamed herself because she had started drinking again and also smoking. But she says Ashton didn't fully understand it. Even so, the wedding was still on. They got married in 2005 after 2 years of dating. Demi says she really felt like she was marrying Ashton for life. She thought their love had been tested by everything they had been through, and the relationship had survived. He was very romantic, treated her wonderfully, and she considered him her soulmate. Unfortunately, on top of all her addictions, Demi became addicted to Ashton. And it's not just me saying this, she acknowledges it in her book. Ashton asked her if they could have a threesome, to bring other people into their bed. And because she wanted to please him in everything and become the woman he wanted to have, she agreed in order to seem relaxed, modern, and cool. But she later regretted it. She said, "I did something that didn't align with my values to prove I was an open and fun woman." And later, she felt devastated and used. In fact, it's what erased many of the boundaries in their marriage because from then on, he started being unfaithful. The first time was with a 21-year-old girl they both met at a bowling alley who approached them to say hello. She later gave her phone number to Ashton, and he called her as a way to make Demi feel bad because she didn't like the girl. This infidelity was all over the magazines, and you can imagine the scandal. Demi thought of ignoring it, thinking that if she didn't acknowledge it, it wouldn't have happened. Unfortunately, her 2 younger daughters saw everything Ashton did to their mother and how she forgave him over and over again, so they stopped talking to her. This shows how these patterns repeat because, as a child, Demi also didn't understand how her mother could forgive and forgive her father. Now, her daughters didn't understand how Demi could forgive and forgive Ashton. And not only did she forgive him for things like that, but she also wanted to have another child with him. She started looking for surrogates, and when she told Ashton she had found the right woman, he said, "I'm not sure I can do this. In fact, I think this marriage isn't working anymore." So basically, he was telling her that he didn't want to continue, but Demi couldn't accept it. She suggested couples therapy to fix things, but he didn't accept it either. She kept trying, and he sent confusing messages. Sometimes he would send her very romantic emails or flowers to her house, but I think it was also his way of dealing with the guilt from all the humiliations and infidelities. Finally, the media caught him cheating again, this time with a young blonde, as Demi mentions. But Demi was willing to forgive all of this until 1 week after her 49th birthday, he left her house. Their marriage ended after 6 years in November 2011. After Ashton left, Demi wasn't doing well. She had withdrawal symptoms from her addiction to him. She wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping, and spent a lot of time in a bad state. But despite all of this, she still went to the celebration her oldest daughter threw, the only one who still spoke to her, on Christmas Eve. Demi got really drunk. One can imagine. She consumed substances and embarrassed her daughter so much that they had to call an ambulance to take her to the hospital. The media found out about this, and it became a huge scandal. The only daughter who had spoken to her also stopped talking to her. 3 years went by during which Demi was completely alone. Every birthday, Christmas, and celebration, no one would congratulate her, not even with a text message. I can imagine how difficult this must have been for her daughters. They also developed issues with substances, eating disorders, and alcohol. Her oldest daughter, Rumor, and her youngest, Tallulah, have talked about this. Demi says that, in the end, this time alone was good because it helped her reconnect with herself, get therapy, and begin healing, although she had some acting roles. After recovering, I think that today, at 62, Demi is regaining her moment of glory. Without discrediting Mikey Madison, because I watched the movie Anora and thought her performance was excellent, I truly felt like she was that character. and I can't imagine her in another role due to how well she played it. Still, I think that Oscar was deserved by Demi. She poured her soul and her heart into that film. For me, Demi, despite all she's been through, is a survivor. She's someone who shows you that no matter how low you fall, you can always rise again, maybe slowly, but the love that you didn't receive, you can give to yourself and find the strength to move forward. Before finishing this video, I want to talk about something from Demi's past that I really didn't know. I found out when I was looking for photos to make the thumbnail for this video. A video from 1982 resurfaced, when Demi was only 19. But it's very problematic because she kisses a boy younger than her. This is about Philip Dancini, a co-star from General Hospital, the show Demi was filming at that time. In the video, they were celebrating the boy's 15th birthday, and Demi kisses him not once or twice, but multiple times. I can't even show you the video here because it's quite inappropriate, and the image doesn't help either because Demi looked like this at the time, and the boy looked about 11 years old. She was already married to Freddie Moore, her first husband, and even jokes in the video about marrying this boy, Philip. I don't mention this to cancel her or to change what we've already seen of her history, which, as you've seen, is very painful. But I do bring it up to remind everyone that even the people who have suffered the most can have questionable behaviors. People are not just victims or guilty. We have many nuances, and in appreciating those nuances, I believe we grow as a society and as an audience. Up until now, Demi has not made any statement about it, despite people on social media calling her a hypocrite and accusing her of double standards for complaining about sexism in Hollywood and discrimination against older women, but on the other hand, doing things like this that are highly criticized. Some are even demanding a public apology from her. However, at the same time, some people believe that the video was resurfaced strategically as part of a smear campaign organized by the team of actress Fernanda Torres, who was also nominated for Best Actress for the movie I Am Still Here. Before this controversy about Demi, a video from 17 years ago resurfaced of Fernanda Torres doing blackface and mocking black people. And her PR team also brought up this Demi controversy and the tweet supposedly from Carla Sofia Gascon to ensure Fernanda wouldn't be the only one with stains on her past, thus giving her a better chance at winning the Oscar. This theory, although unconfirmed, could explain why the Academy went with the less problematic actress, Mikey Madison, and left the three stronger actresses out of the award. In fact, in January before that Demi video resurfaced, there were articles like this one that said the fight between Carla Sofia and Fernanda Torres was good for Demi because it would secure her Oscar. These two actresses seem to accuse each other, and I found it hilarious when they made a meme with Miley Cyrus receiving an award with two women fighting behind her. So that would be Demi, with Carla Sofia and Fernanda behind her. How creative people can be on the internet. Supposedly, that would have been Demi, but then her video from 1982 came out, and everything fell apart. Demi is not the only celebrity, nor the only common woman who goes through these emotions of fear of aging and self-hatred.